Senator Sheldon Whitehouse didn't just walk into that hearing, he detonated a political grenade. In front of the cameras, he confronted FBI Director Patel with a question that cuts to the heart of America's trust in law enforcement. Is the Bureau being run as a neutral institution or as a weapon in the hands of power? Whitehouse wasn't asking about policy details or minor staffing issues. He was pointing to something darker: claims of an enemies list, mysterious pauses in background checks, and testimony Patel refused to fully explain. The senator's tone was sharp, his facts precise, and his challenge unmistakable.
House.
Boy, is my timing good.
It is very good.
Director Patel, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
When you were here for your confirmation, we talked about your so-called enemies list. It appears to me that there have been adverse actions of various kinds taken against about 20 of the 60 people on your enemies list. You've been in office for 7 months. At that rate, you've got 14 months until you've hit all 60. Can you explain that?
Again, that is an entirely inaccurate presupposition. I do not have an enemies list. You can continue to characterize it as you wish. The only actions we take, generally speaking, for personnel at the FBI are ones based on merit and qualification and your ability to uphold your constitutional duty. You fall short, you don't work there anymore.
Well, there was a list. You don't like it to be called an enemies list, and it had about 60 names, and about 20 have had an adverse action. So those are, I think, pretty clear facts. Let me move on to your grand jury testimony, which we also talked about when you were here. I think you indicated that you understood that a witness in the grand jury is free to discuss afterwards whatever they told the grand jury. And you then went on to suggest, saying, I can't go into court orders granted by the DC District Chief Judge, and you want me to violate a court order. In those remarks, you fairly plainly suggested that there was a court order of some kind that somehow restricted or limited your ability to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury. Since then, that chief judge that you mentioned, Judge Boasberg, has written, and I'm quoting him here, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee. Can we confirm here today that there is no court order of any kind that limits your ability as a witness before the grand jury to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury?
We can confirm that pursuant to my action, that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript.
Let's, in what forum was it released, may I ask?
Publicly.
Okay, we'll check on that. The FBI does background investigations. In the case of a U.S. attorney, Jeanine Pirro, it has come to light that in a civil proceeding, that Fox News executives, prior to her confirmation, called her, I'm quoting here, a reckless maniac who makes, quote, insane comments, and said, I don't trust her to be responsible, and noted her penchant for what they called random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. My question to you is, did that turn up in her background investigation?
For any background investigation, Senator, we do not discuss those publicly. And for every background investigation, when there's an adjudication, it is not made by me. It is made by the career professionals who run the inspection division and background check system.
Do you know if that information was found? You see, we're an oversight body here, and there are really three possibilities here. One is that the FBI background investigation didn't find that stuff. That's worth noting because these investigations, full field background investigations, are supposed to find that stuff. That's possibility one. Possibility two is that the FBI did in fact find that information and then did not report it to the administration or to the committee. And the third is that you found it, you reported it to the administration, and they went ahead with her nomination knowing that she had been described as a reckless maniac who made insane comments, who wasn't trusted by colleagues to be responsible, and who had a penchant for random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. Are you saying that this committee does not have any authority or reason to look into which of those things is true?
This committee can look into anything it wishes. I'm telling you that the background investigations that are done by the HRD division are done by career individuals. They do not report the details of those to me. They adjudicate those independently and individually. That's how it's always been done.
What happened during the pause of FBI background investigations that was alleged in the complaint against you and the FBI by the FBI agents who were terminated? On February 12th, Emil Bovee directed the FBI, quote, to pause any FBI background investigations of Trump nominees until Patel was confirmed, which happened on February 20th, is the general description of what they alleged. Why, do you know, were background investigations paused? Was it so material like this could be scrubbed out of them? And have they been resumed without that pause fully and normally after your arrival on February 20th?
I can speak to the time period since I got there. Background investigations have been ongoing across the board at the FBI.
Why was the pause, do you know?
I was not there.
It wasn't explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, they've had an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point?
Again, I leave it to the men and women at the HRD division to.
If the allegations are true, then the FBI may be drifting away from its mission of impartial justice into the dangerous waters of political loyalty tests. And if they're not true, then why are so many red flags piling up? What Whitehouse exposed wasn't just Patel, it was a question every American should be asking right now. Whitehouse's first strike landed where it hurt most, the so-called enemies list. He laid it out in plain numbers. Roughly 60 names were said to be on this list of individuals within the Bureau, and in just 7 months of Patel's leadership, about 20 had already faced some kind of adverse action. At that pace, Whitehouse warned, it wouldn't take long before every single person on that list was removed, demoted or sidelined. Patel immediately denied the existence of any such list. He dismissed the senator's characterization as inaccurate and insisted that all personnel decisions were based solely on merit, qualifications, and constitutional duty. But Whitehouse wasn't letting the denial stand without challenge. He pressed again, repeating the math, pointing to the pattern, and making it clear that whether Patel wanted to call it a list or not, the results were the same: dozens of individuals suddenly facing consequences that all pointed in one direction. The exchange wasn't about semantics. It was about accountability. If those targeted really were disproportionately people on one internal document, then the FBI's culture under Patel might be less about professionalism and more about loyalty tests. And that was only the beginning. From the alleged enemies list, Whitehouse turned to something even more delicate, Patel's own words under oath. During earlier testimony, Patel had suggested that a court order prevented him from discussing what he told a grand jury. It sounded convincing, even technical, an excuse rooted in procedure. But then came a bombshell clarification from Judge Boasberg, the chief judge Patel himself had referenced. Boasberg made it clear that under federal rules, no such order existed. Witnesses are free to disclose their own testimony if they choose, which means Patel wasn't bound by secrecy at all. Whitehouse pounced. If the rules allowed Patel to speak openly, then why had he implied otherwise? Was it a misunderstanding of the law, or a calculated attempt to dodge oversight? Patel stuck to vague assurances saying the transcript had been released, but the damage was already done. The contradiction hung heavy in the room, raising a far bigger question than just one man's words. If the FBI's own director appeared unwilling, or unable to be fully transparent about his testimony, what did that say about the culture of openness at the very top of America's most powerful law enforcement agency? And Whitehouse was only getting started. Whitehouse then shifted to a topic that sounds routine on the surface but carries massive implications: FBI background checks. According to allegations, there had been an unexplained pause in these investigations lasting several days. For most people that might sound like a small bureaucratic delay, but in the world of federal service, background checks are everything. They determine whether officials are fit to serve, whether sensitive information stays secure, and whether unqualified or compromised individuals slip through the cracks. Whitehouse pressed Patel, why the pause? Who ordered it? Was the director told? Patel's answers were careful but unsatisfying. He insisted he wasn't aware of such a pause when he arrived, and that he leaves those matters to career staff. But that was exactly Whitehouse's point. If a decision as critical as halting background checks was made, how could the director of the FBI not know about it? The senator floated the most troubling possibility, that pauses like this could be used to scrub or bury damaging information before it ever reaches oversight bodies. Patel denied interfering, but the uncertainty lingered. Because if background checks aren't handled with consistency and transparency, the very process meant to protect the system could become a tool to manipulate it. And then came the most striking example. To drive the point home, Whitehouse raised a real-world case. When Jeanine Pirro was nominated as a U.S. attorney, troubling details had already been circulating. Internal communications from her own network's executives reportedly described her as a reckless maniac, someone prone to insane comments and conspiracy theories pulled from fringe corners of the internet. These weren't whispers from political opponents, they came from the people who had worked closest with her. So Whitehouse asked the obvious question, did that information appear in her FBI background check? If it didn't, that's a failure of the system. If it did but was ignored, then who made the decision to push forward anyway? Patel's answer offered little clarity. He reminded the committee that background checks are conducted by career professionals, not him, and that the results are adjudicated independently. But Whitehouse wasn't satisfied. Because the issue wasn't just about one person, it was about the reliability of a system Americans rely on to ensure that powerful positions are filled by trustworthy individuals. If damaging details about a nominee were flagged, and yet nothing was done, then the process itself begins to look compromised. And the senator wasn't done uncovering possible cracks in that system. Just when the hearing seemed heated enough, Whitehouse dropped another allegation, one that cut directly to the FBI's integrity. Reports suggested that during internal employee reviews, agents were asked who they voted for in the 2024 election. It was the kind of claim that, if true, would shatter the Bureau's reputation for impartiality. Political loyalty tests inside the FBI, that would cross a line no agency sworn to uphold the Constitution should ever approach. Whitehouse pressed Patel hard, is this really happening? Since when does a person's vote a proper question for career advancement or disciplinary review? Patel shot the idea down. Under his leadership, he insisted, such questions were never asked, and it was improper to allege otherwise. His denial was firm. But the fact that such accusations had surfaced at all spoke volumes about the level of distrust now hanging over the Bureau. For Whitehouse, this wasn't about one question or one denial, it was about perception and credibility. Even the suggestion that FBI employees could be judged by their political choices risks destroying morale within the agency. And if agents themselves believe politics might influence their careers, how can the public trust the FBI's decisions? The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. By this point, Whitehouse had laid out more than isolated controversies. He was drawing a pattern, a series of red flags that when connected painted a troubling picture of how the FBI might be operating under Patel's leadership. An alleged enemies list where careers seemed to crumble at a suspicious pace, a misleading claim about grand jury secrecy that turned out to be false, A mysterious pause in background investigations at one of the most sensitive moments. A high-profile nominee whose background raised questions but slipped through anyway. And now even whispers of political litmus tests inside the Bureau's own ranks. Each issue on its own might be brushed aside as misunderstanding, coincidence, or bureaucratic confusion. But together, Whitehouse argued, they hinted at something deeper, a culture where transparency was elusive, accountability was dodged, and loyalty seemed to matter more than merit. That's not just a management style, that's a threat to public trust. Because when the agency charged with impartial justice begins to look partisan, every decision it makes is called into question. Whitehouse's message was clear. This wasn't about one senator scoring points. It was about the integrity of an institution that holds immense power over American lives. And the conclusion left no room for doubt. In the end, Whitehouse's questioning wasn't about catching Patel in a single misstep. It was about reminding the country why oversight exists in the first place. The FBI holds enormous power over cases, careers, and the confidence of the American people. If that power is used fairly, it protects democracy. If it's abused, it undermines it. That's why the issues raised in this hearing matter so much. The alleged enemies list, the contradictions about testimony, the pause in background checks, the questions about nominees, and even the rumors of political litmus tests, all of it pointed toward one theme: accountability. Without transparency, the public is left to wonder if decisions are being driven by merit or by politics, and once that doubt takes root, trust in the institution begins to crumble. Whitehouse's challenge was simple but powerful: prove that the FBI is serving the Constitution, not any partisan agenda. For Patel, denying the accusations may have been enough in the moment, but for the country the questions don't vanish so easily. Because when justice is at stake, silence isn't an answer, oversight isn't an inconvenience, it's a safeguard. And the strength of democracy depends on citizens who demand it, and leaders who respect it.